So Father Constantine Nassar shares with us a successful marriage does not happen nonchalantly like an intricate dance. Marriage is the art of two people learning how to move gracefully through life in step with each other. To become an accomplished dancer requires many lessons over several years. Learning how to move gracefully through life in step with your spouse will require weekly, if not daily, effort and commitment. It is never too late to learn how to dance, nor is it too late to master the art of marriage. It will take a lifetime of lessons, but that's what marriage is, a lifetime commitment of moving gracefully through life in step together.
When we think about trust and commitment, I just want to start with Dr. John Gottman calls it the sound relationship house. So he uses all the topics we're talking about. He puts it kind of in the metaphor of a house. And what he says is that trust and commitment are the pillars of a sound, healthy, sturdy house. I kind of think of it in kind of a Greek kind of way. If you've ever seen the Parthenon at all, if you could picture the Parthenon without the pillars, we would have never ever there would be nothing really to talk about without the pillars. So if we can imagine our relationships without pillars. Well, what are the pillars we're looking at tonight? Trust and commitment. The only added thought I wanted to throw in there before we roll tape and look at the presentation is that our whole life story shapes our experience with trust and commitment, going all the way back to our very first relationships with parents, which is what was modeled for us, but also what we experienced with them emotionally shapes our idea of who was there for us, who wasn't there for us. Those early years do play into the fabric of, or the pillars of our personal relationship with trust and commitment. And then also want to mention, when we think about trust and commitment, sometimes we tend to think about the other person. Are they trustworthy? Are they committed enough? That's one way to look at it. That's like one side of it. The other is sometimes we have to look at where am I at with my ability to trust. Sometimes if we have enough insecurities, we're going to have trust issues. The other person might do something that disappoints us, and we'll process that as, I can't trust them. So we just want to keep in mind both sides of how does the other person show up being trustworthy and committed. What's my sort of emotional experience with being trusting, and also moving forward with being a committed person. The final thing I'll say is, and this is what we're most thankful for, here we are as, believers, Christ-centered people. That whole experience, talk about pillars, that whole experience is trust and commitment, that he is the most trustworthy. We put our trust in him. We've made a commitment to him because even while we're yet sinners, he committed to be there for us. So we keep that in mind, that this is not just a human endeavor tonight, although we'll be looking at certainly our part in how we experience and what we bring home in the area of trust and commitment, but that truly the depth of who we are is based on trust and commitment to Christ. So let's roll forward with our topic of trust and commitment.
Speaks in my soul till the stars fall out.
Hi, I'm Press Pat.
I'm Father Tom.
And we are really excited to be with you to share the first date on trust and commitment. And the chapter is entitled Lean on Me.
And when I read this chapter, and I'm sure you'll concur, the powerful invitation for me was, how do I show my commitment to my wife intentionally? And I thought of, and I use this in therapy, I'm a therapist as well, I thought, if I was watching a movie with some friends of the last week, what would I see in that movie that would show commitment as a verb? And I thought, what are you committed to? What are we committed to in a real way, in an intentional way?
And trust and commitment is virtually the cornerstone of every relationship. It is the oxygen. It is the way in which We are bound together. And what does that look like? What is that cornerstone? How Christ talks about being the cornerstone, the one stone that's surrounding everything that supports it. And when we're going through these 8 dates, we realize that our trust and commitment with one another is really the foundation in which all relationships are grounded.
But I never thought really of the daily decision to be committed, to rededicate. And when we say in the liturgy, let us commit ourselves and one another and our whole life to Christ our God, I'm thinking, it's just like we say it and we gloss over it, but how are you committed and how am I committed to Christ and to our spouse? But when you are committed, you will transform your relationship around issues around conflict, sexuality, and the things that we're going to discuss for the next 7 weeks. So we're so fortunate. We feel blessed to be the first to start this series off to talk about the most powerful thing is to really wonder what commitment is for you and what are you committed to. Listen.
And what is commitment? I mean, the definition actually says the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, activity, or a person. And it also says it's a pledge or an undertaking. So when we were married, we did actually sign a document stating our commitment to one another. And what is trust? Trust, firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. So again, how are we living out commitment and trust?
So we're going to talk about how to be committed to honoring one another, how to be committed to
Showing up for one another.
showing up with one another.
St. Paul, he writes so beautifully in the scriptures. He writes, so if there is any encouragement in Christ, any incentive of love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord with one mind. Do nothing from selfish conceit, but in humility count others better than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. I think St. Paul so beautifully talks about what commitment really looks like. It's going out of yourself and being united one with that person.
And how do you make commitment a verb that we actually activate that today for the next 7 weeks and the rest of our life to really be curious about that? And I'd like for you to think about, for all of us to think about committing to honor our spouse. My sister-in-law is a famous violist, and she had friends coming over to her house one evening, and they came in with their little instruments, and he had a violin, and I always wanted to hold a violin, never held a violin, so I asked him, and that was like, well, yeah, not an appropriate thing, but I guess I didn't know. I said, can I hold your violin? He reluctantly opened his little suitcase thing. He gave me the violin. I held it, and as I was holding it, he was getting nervous, and I looked in the little keyhole, and I started reading. It said S-T-R-A-D. It was a Stradivarius, and this piece of wood that I thought was just a piece of wood, I realized, and my hands started shaking, realizing that this had value and honor because I knew what it really was. So when I thought about holding this violin, the Stradivarius, it was worth like $1 million or $2 million back then. This is like 30 years ago. I thought, can you imagine putting honor on your spouse? 5 words, 5 letters, honor, and to realize that she or he is so valuable, that we're God's beloved children. And one thing, can we be committed to the best of our abilities to treating each other with that kind of honor?
Ever so often, it's important to think back about your wedding day, about the day that you made that commitment with one another in front of the altar and in front of the community to pledge your love and your commitment and trust in one another. There is no doubt, we look back at these pictures, whether it be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 34 years, we were united by our wedding rings. We were united by our wedding crowns. We were united in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit to build a lifetime together. Every day, what does honor and commitment look like? I think it's about showing up, and it's looking at that person that you're married to and accepting them and loving them where they are, no matter what their story is. in their pain, in their hurt, in their frustration, in all of it, we're committed to loving them exactly like they are.
And being real with each other to the best of our abilities.
What it doesn't look like, and what commitment and trust that's betrayed looks like, is not making one another a priority. It's not keeping our promises. It's not being there when our husband or wife are sick or hurting. And it's lying, and it's infidelity, and it's having secrets. And these are the things that destroy our marriages and our relationships.
And I think at the core of commitment is we're committed to be in communion and connection. And when that's challenged in any small way, when I start questioning, can I count on you?
Can I depend on you?
You know, are you there for me?
Will you be there for me when I'm sick or I'm needing help?
And are you going to respond to me when I'm in this funky place? Or are you going to teach me or tell me what I should be doing or lecture me? It's a powerful thing to sit with one another during those times where we want to run away because we're scared or we're angry or hurt. And that's what really poisons our relationship. Not that we're angry or hurt, but how we respond to it, not committed to honoring, not committed to the fruits of the Spirit, as St. Paul speaks about, with gentleness, with compassion, with love, with
generosity.
Yeah. And we know how difficult it is when things are challenging, or we do keep secrets, or we can't be honest with each other. So, and we know out there's some of you that want this kind of relationship, this kind of commitment, and you don't have it. We know there's some of you out there that are hurting, some of you out there that might not be trusting your partner. So we
have several dear friends that we know that
beautiful
are
people
in status quo marriages. They are living it out and they're committed to staying married, but they're not happily married.
And they're not committed to finding a different dance to their relationships because they're hiding.
Right. And you know what? We don't want to live in the status quo.
So our prayer is we make a commitment to find healing when we're hurting. We find different ways to speak when we hurt each other and get frustrated with each other.
And to be honest with each other. I have this wonderful priest that I know who has this famous saying that says, what is not revealed cannot be healed.
So here's the deal. We need to be committed to having a real relationship. If we're not really connected, we need to find ways to be connected in a healthy way. And that's what we're hoping as we journey through this time, that we learn that kind of commitment to heal, to live a Christ-centered life, and to not be shamed if we're not where we want to be, but to know that Christ wants to meet us in the pain to transfigure it. So as we travel through these next 7 weeks, hopefully we can create a space where we can have the safety to be curious enough to commit to healing, to commit to finding new ways to old stories, to commit to treating each other with gentleness, to commit to knowing that the person you married, that Stradivarius, deep down inside is a beautiful person, and we need to find different ways to resolve conflict. And can you imagine every day you wake up and you expect the best marriage, you expect to be committed, you expect to be loyal, and you expect to offer your love and grace to the spouse and to your family? Because you cannot be great if you're an athlete and you're not committed to running stairs or doing the exercise. You can't be committed and be a violinist if you don't practice the violin over and over. So we're going to be committed to develop a beautiful relationship intentionally, right, for this next 8 weeks and for the rest of your lives.
There's an old business fable about commitment. First time I heard it was years ago. I was watching a video of Dartmouth's rowing coach. He was telling a story to inspire his team. And basically in this story, there's a father, there's a son, they're sitting down at breakfast, and the son says, "Dad, I'm learning about commitment versus contribution in school, right? I'm trying to grasp it, but I can't quite understand the difference." Father thinks about it for a minute and says, "Look down at your plate. What do you see?" Boy says, "Ham and eggs." Father says, "Well, that chicken made a contribution to your breakfast. That pig made a commitment." He then goes on to tell his team to row like pigs. And that simple metaphor created a foundation for everything that's come through my life since then. Right? In anything we do, there's the option to go all in or to walk the line, to hedge your bets. And people so often leave or quit when something becomes difficult because there's another door they've left open, right? There's an easier way, an escape route. But let me ask you this. Do you think if it was a life or death situation, right? Say you needed water to survive, would you give up after looking for 3 hours and coming up empty-handed? Of course not. You'd keep looking because life depended on it, right? There's no other options available. There's this old saying that if you want to take the island, burn the ships. Commit. And it's not until you do this that things truly begin to change, that progress is made at the highest level. You simply cannot tiptoe to success. You can't sneak up behind it. You have to own it, right? Go after what you want like the world is on fire, like your universe revolves around making this happen. I have never, in my 28 years of existence, seen a lion walk up to a gazelle and hope that it falls over, right? It attacks it with everything that it has. Speed, strength, tenacity. That's what brings home the prize. If you and your goals aren't one, if they are not the same, that's a pretty good indicator that you are fighting the wrong fight. You should live and breathe your dreams. Inhale and exhale them. They should live at the forefront of your mind, where every thought that comes through your head should be in the context of that dream. That basic question, how bad do you want it? Well, if you're not willing to fully commit to dive into something, then that gives you a pretty good answer right out of the gate. You can talk about hours spent, routines, habits, but if you aren't passionate about what you want, if you don't immerse yourself in it, none of that really matters. Live how you need to live. Do what you need to do. Be who you need to be to make your dreams real. Fully commit to excellence. Because until you do that, you will be left with only a vision and a false sense of reality. Winners don't have time for that. Okay, set your mind to your target and crush it. That is the only option.
Whoa.
Again,
That was a powerful video.
yep, and again, it talks about fully committing to excellence.
That you go all in. I just have to put your little toe in the water. Go all in.
No escape route.
And we
don't leave or quit just because things get difficult.
And I remember he said, "How bad do you want it? How bad do you want a healthy, beautiful, vibrant, God-centered marriage?"
And we want that. So again, when we're talking about commitment, we're committing to honoring.
And we got to commit to really being real with one another in the beautiful ways and the challenging ways.
Being honest and open. And then we're going to commit to gratitude. Commit to appreciating our spouse. And we were married 34 years ago. Here's what we look like. And in your date that you get to go on, you're going to think about how much do you cherish your partner. Of all you've accomplished and all the things you've enjoyed together, all the fun times, the comforts, the small, silly little things, the dreams, the frustration that you've conquered. Just consider your whole story and what living life together has given you so far.
So we're going to write on a sticky pad things that we appreciate and the times of gratitude in our journey. And one thing is if you know my wife, she should be the priest. She's the center of all beautiful things. She just brightens up the room with joy.
And I'm going to say that you listen to my heart. You prioritize our family.
And then the other thing I want to include is, I don't know, many of you don't know, but my wife had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So for me, it's kind of a weird thing, but I cherish that she allowed me to walk alongside her with the challenges and the fear of dying, the fear of chemotherapy, the fear of the unknown, the fear of spinal tap. And
I wrote loving me through cancer and showing your kindness.
there you go.
Again, we had all these different ideas.
So you get to do that.
So again, as you guys begin to discover and really look into the idea of trust and commitment, we hope that you will remember to commit to honoring, commit to open, real, and honest conversations, and commitment to excellence, and to gratitude and appreciation for one another.
So we're looking forward to continuing this journey with you.
help us to commit fully to one another with never-ending trust and loyalty.
Keep our bond of love always new. Give us courage to seek help in areas of our relationship that needs healing.
Gladden our lives with the joy of marriage, that with one heart we may praise and glorify you. Amen.
You're the only one. You're the only one.
For our discussion groups are trust and commitment are the foundation of every topic in the 8-date series. What are trust and commitment killers? What are those things that really work against the idea of trust and commitment? And then what are the trust and commitment cultivators? What are those things that cultivate in your relationship trust and commitment? And finally, the second group is to share a wedding photo or a favorite photo.
I know in our group, I really enjoyed really stepping into authenticity and really doing our best to be real. And everyone said beautiful things, but someone said, sometimes it's really hard for me to be honest and committed to being vulnerable because I'm not sure how my wife or husband is going to react. So I think for me is how do we take the courage to know that we're on the same team. We all want the best for each other. And the only way that's going to happen is we can speak from our heart in an authentic way. Brene Brown talks about the anatomy of trust. And I really want all of you to check it out because she does a beautiful job for us to think about in a really scientific, yet I think Christian Orthodox way.
So I will read for you Brene Brown's acronym BRAVING in regards to trust. B, boundaries. You respect my boundaries, and when you're not clear about what's okay and not okay, you ask. You're willing to say no. Reliability. You do what you say you'll do. Accountability. You own your mistakes, apologize, and make amends. V, vault. You don't share information or experiences that are not yours to share. I need to know that my confidences are kept and that you're not sharing with me any information about other people that should be confidential. I stands for integrity. You choose courage over comfort. You choose what is right over what is fun, fast, or easy. And you choose to practice your values rather than simply professing them. N is for non-judgment. I can ask for what I need, and you can ask for what you need. We can talk about how we feel without judgment. And finally, G, generosity. You extend the most generous interpretation possible to the intentions, words, and actions of others. Now we're going to pass it on to Father Vasily for tonight's closing remarks.
Last week, George and Father Timothy, they said that our marriage benefits from how much we care and then how much skill we have. And when we care a lot, but we don't have skills, it presents some problems. And when we have skills, but don't really care, then we can get into manipulation and these things. So we know that you all care. We all care because we're all here. And we wouldn't be here taking time to work on our marriage if we didn't care. So what we want to do is give us skills. We want to have the skills to match our level of care to help us in our marriages. So John Gottman, in some of his other books, he writes that the key to building trust in our relationships is by being in what he calls attunement with our spouse. And we'll talk about what that means in just a second. But in our marriage life, right, we get these moments of possibility. And the possibility is the possibility to connect in a deep or emotional way. And Gottman calls these opportunities sliding door moments. And I don't know, it comes from a movie. I think it's called Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow. Anyway, and she's trying to get on the subway, and in one version she makes it and gets home, and the other version she just missed the sliding doors and doesn't get on, and her life changes depending whether she makes the subway or doesn't make it. So we get these sliding door moments in our marriage when our spouse makes a bid to connect with us on an emotional level. That they're looking for affection. They could be looking for sympathy or empathy, etc. And so when they make these bids for connection, and really it's emotional connection, we have three choices, right? We can either respond to that bid, right, and meet them. We can ignore it, right? If we're busy, if we're on our phone and we're just ignore what's being said and keep scrolling, or we can even turn against the bid. And when our marriage is really sour, we may, freeze up, and go stone faced and just walk out of the room and turn completely away from them. So, we ignore these bids. And I think probably those of us who are here, we don't really do stonewalling and completely reject the bids that our partner is making. But sometimes we do ignore or turn away in maybe a soft manner. And we do this because we make the mistake of thinking that we're responsible for how our spouse is feeling, and their emotions are scary to us because we don't want to accept responsibility for that. Or if they're feeling down, we don't want to feel down. And so we don't meet them. We don't meet these sliding door moments. And we make the mistake of harming trust instead of building trust. So this is how we attune. And Gottman says we need to attune to our spouse. And so attune, we get this acronym, right? The A is to be aware of the emotion, right? We want to notice that our spouse is reaching out and be present for them. Stop what we're doing and be present. Really, really listen. We want to turn towards the emotion. And that means to make eye contact, right? To connect, right? This is a possibility. And the possibility, the opportunity is to connect with our spouse. And this builds trust, right? The next T is tolerance. And we want to be tolerant of the emotions that we're experiencing because of interacting with our spouse and being present in their emotion. We're going to feel it too, right? And remember that it's not our fault and it's going to be okay, right? If they're sad, it's okay, right? It's not our responsibility that they're sad. We can't make them feel anything, right? We can't make them feel a certain way, but we can be with them in it and it's going to be okay. And then the U is understanding the emotion. So, like with those of you who have young kids, like I do, they may present anger, especially boys, right? And we want to look for the softer emotions beneath the anger. So really, they're frustrated, they're disappointed, they're scared, right? Well, we want to do this with our spouse too, to listen for the need that they have, to really listen to the need and find the source of the pain, right? They may be presenting an emotion, but underneath that emotion, there's a real need that we can help meet, right? So we want to understand what's really, really going on. And in the end, non-defensive listening to the emotion. So emotions are not, Gottman says, they're not like sweaters, right? That we can take off and put on. Like, I'm feeling sad, so I'm going to take off my sad sweater. I'm going to put on the happy sweater. It's sweater weather up here in Alaska right now, but emotions aren't like that, right? I can't say, okay, I'm not going to be sad. I'm going to be happy now, right? We can't do that. So when we're listening to our partner and they're demonstrating frustration or something, we want to be curious about it, curious about the emotion, curious about the frustration, even if that means we have to take a little bit of responsibility for something that we've done. But if we're being defensive, right? If we're being defensive, we can't be present. We can't be aware of what's going on with them if we're only inside of ourselves and becoming defensive about what might be coming our way, right? We want to focus on their experience and their pain. And then finally, empathy towards that emotion. And again, right, it's not a sweater. Sometimes the mistake we make, and we can't show empathy because we do this, right? We say, the feeling you're feeling right now isn't really valid, right? Just cheer up. You don't have the right to be sad about that. Don't be sad, just be happy, right? Or you don't have the right to be frustrated about that. That's not a valid emotion, right? And so if we're doing this, if we're judging the validity of the emotion, we're definitely not empathetic. We're really not responding to their need, and it prevents connection, and this erodes trust, right? So I want to leave us with this. Maybe you can write it down and put it on your refrigerator and try to remember that many moments are going to come to you in the week, maybe several times a day, and we want to meet those bids for connection by connecting, by being present, by being open, and by not being afraid of the emotions we may experience, but by connecting and helping to heal simply by being there and loving.
Lord Jesus Christ, who are the fulfillment of the law and the prophets, who fills all things in both heaven and on earth. You gave yourself to the whole world as a living sacrifice and out of love for all mankind. Though you asked in the garden if the cup of suffering could be removed from you, you nevertheless remained obedient and committed to the will of your Father and trusting his will. You endured the cross for us and for our salvation. As frail human beings, it is difficult at times to trust due to our own past painful relational experiences. For all people fall short of your glory, all sin, and all suffer through the actions and words of others. How often have I asked that the cup of suffering be removed from my life in whatever form it takes? Yet I pray that your will be done, and that you simply grant me a measure of grace that would be sufficient for me in every circumstance. Grant me the ability to trust you with all my heart, that I may stay committed to you and to your path, which leads to everlasting life. Grant also that my beloved and I may forever cherish one another, be fully committed to one another, and trust one another, and in and through all that we will encounter in life. Help us to be forever mindful of the blessings that you have bestowed upon us as husband and wife, so that we may glorify your holy name through the ways in which we speak to one another, care for one another, and cherish one another. For you, O Lord, are a good, kind, and merciful God. To you we give glory, honor, and worship, now and forever into the ages of ages. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.